The war should have ended when the dead were defeated. But peace is a fragile thing in Westeros. Jon Snow had returned from the north after defeating the Night King, thinking the living would unite now. But the south was not ready to kneel to the north, not while Daenerys Stormborn sat on the Iron Throne, her dragons breathing fire and her armies marching with pride. Robb Stark was never supposed to return. The Red Wedding had claimed his life, or so the world thought. But some say the old gods were not done with the young wolf. He had been saved barely by a loyal bannerman who carried him to the deep woods beyond the Neck. Years passed in hiding, healing. His body bore scars, but his spirit still burned. When he heard the North had survived the dead, and that Jon Snow had led them, he returned, not as a king, but as a brother. The reunion was quiet, emotional. Jon stared at Robb in disbelief, touched his chest to make sure it wasn't a ghost. Arya cried for the first time in years. Sansa stood frozen, then ran into Robb's arms like she was a child again. The Starks were whole once more, but the world outside wasn't. Daenerys ruled King's Landing with a firm hand and burning dragons. Her armies had won the south, but not the north. Jon had once loved her, yes, but love couldn't erase the screams of children who died in the fire at King's Landing. He saw what she became. He left her, returned to the north, and didn't look back. Now war was coming again. Daenerys sent a raven, not with peace, but with a warning. "Bend the knee or burn," the message said. Robb crumpled the letter in his fist. "We've heard this before," he said coldly. "From Joffrey. From the Lannisters. It always ends in blood. Jon didn't want war. He never did. But he also knew Daenerys wasn't the woman she used to be. The power had changed her. The loss of her advisors, the betrayal, the hunger for the throne, it had made her cruel. "She's not mad," Jon told Robb, "but she's not right either." Robb looked over the cold walls of Winterfell. The wind was sharp. Snow had started to fall, slow and steady. "Then we fight smart, not just with swords. We know the north. She doesn't, but the dragons, they were the true terror. No army in the north had anything that could match Drogon and Rhaegal. Scorching fire could turn a battlefield into ash in seconds. Even the bravest soldiers couldn't fight fire from the sky, so the Starks planned carefully. Gendry, the blacksmith, began building new weapons, massive ballistas with spears, tipped in dragonglass and steel. Wildlings set traps in the forests. Ravens flew to old allies in the Riverlands, the Vale, even Dawn. As they prepared, Daenerys moved. Her unsullied army marched north. The Dothraki rode like a storm behind them, and in the sky 2 dragons flew, their shadows darkening the ground below. She came not just to win, she came to conquer. But Daenerys made one mistake. She underestimated the North's heart. This wasn't the same broken land that once bent to the south. This was a land rebuilt by pain, united by loss, and led by 2 brothers, one who had died and returned, and one who had lived through death. As Daenerys neared the Neck, her scouts returned with news. "Robb Stark lives," they said, "and the North rides for war." Her face was calm, but her eyes burned. "Let them come," she said. "The dragon doesn't fear the wolf," but somewhere deep inside her, Daenerys Targaryen felt something she hadn't in a long time. Daenerys sat in her war tent near Moat Cailin, staring at the map spread across the table. Red stones marked her unsullied, black ones for the Dothraki. She placed 2 small dragon-shaped figures near the edge of the Neck, Drogon and Rhaegal. Then she placed a single white direwolf figure across the map. "Robb Stark," she whispered. Back from the dead, Grey Worm stood beside her, silent as always. Missandei was long gone. Tyrion betrayed her. Varys too. Jorah had died for her. Ser Barristan dead. The throne she had chased across oceans had cost her everyone she loved. Only Grey Worm remained, loyal and cold as steel. "He won't surrender," she said. Grey Worm replied without emotion. "Then he dies." That same night, the Starks gathered in the great hall of Winterfell, just like in the old days, though nothing felt the same. Robb sat at the head, not as king, but as war leader. Jon stood beside him, quieter, more distant than before. Ghost lay at his feet, watching the room with bright red eyes. "We cannot fight her in open field," Robb began. "Not while the dragons are alive." Arya leaned forward. "Then we kill the dragons first." The room went silent. Sansa frowned. "And how do you suggest we do that? Ask them nicely to fall from the sky?" Arya didn't smile. "I killed the Night King. I can kill a dragon," Jon spoke finally. His voice was soft but serious. "You'd die before you got close, Arya. They're not beasts. They're fire-made flesh." Robb stood. "Then we don't fight her fire with fire. We fight it with ice." They all looked at him. He stepped closer to the map and pointed at a dark forest near the neck. "She has to move through here. It's the only pass wide enough for her army. If we trap her dragons in the air, confuse them, blind them, we strike from the trees." He turned to Gendry, who had just arrived from the forge. "How many dragon spear launchers do we have?" "6, maybe more if I had help." "You'll get it," Robb said. "Make them strong." Gendry nodded and left. The plan was dangerous, risky, but there was no other way. 3 nights later, Daenerys moved forward with confidence. The weather had shifted. Snow began to fall hard and fast. The land grew colder with each mile. Her soldiers wrapped their arms tighter around themselves. The Dothraki hated this cold. Even the Unsullied, who never showed pain, moved slower. But her dragons loved the skies. Drogon soared above her, wings wide, breath steaming. Rhaegal followed, screeching through the clouds. She smiled, riding Drogon with a fire in her eyes. Then came the sound, a crack, then another. Suddenly Rhaegal shrieked. A massive spear tore through the sky and pierced his wing. He didn't fall, but he wobbled. Daenerys gasped. From the trees below, another spear shot out. Drogon spun mid-air, barely dodging it. They were ambushed. "Traps!" she shouted. Below, the north attacked like ghosts in the snow. Men rose from beneath the white ground, hidden under cloaks and ice. Flaming arrows flew through the air. Trees lit up, exploding with fire. The dragons roared above, trying to burn the forest, but the smoke from wet wood made them cough blind. Robb led the charge from one side, Jon from the other. They didn't aim to kill the army. They aimed to confuse them. "Cut off the head of the snake." Robb galloped through the snow like he was born for it, swinging his sword, cutting down enemy riders. Jon fought like a shadow, quick, deadly, silent. Daenerys circled above, screaming in rage. Rhaegal limped in the air, blood dripping onto the snow. Drogon blew fire across the trees, but hit nothing. The Starks had vanished until Jon stepped out. He stood in a clearing, looking straight at her. She saw him, face lit by firelight. He didn't flinch. She could end it right now. When command to Drogon and Jon would be ash. But she hesitated, their eyes locked. 2 people who once loved, now standing on opposite sides of a war. In that 1 second of hesitation, everything changed. From the side, Robb shouted. A spear launched from the trees. It struck Drogon in the side, not enough to kill, but enough to make him scream and falter. Daenerys lost balance and fell, tumbling off his back, hitting the ground hard with a crack. She lay still in the snow, eyes wide, coughing blood. Drogon roared and landed beside her, wings spread wide in defense. Robb and Jon stared from the tree line, unsure if it was over or just beginning. Snow kept falling like feathers from the sky, soft and quiet, but nothing else was quiet now. Drogon stood over Daenerys, growling deep in his chest, his giant wings stretching like a shield. His black scales steamed with heat, melting the snow around him. His eyes burned red with rage. He had never seen his mother fall like that before. Jon took a step forward. Robb grabbed his arm. "Don't!" he warned. "That dragon will rip you in half." But Jon wasn't thinking like a soldier anymore. He looked at Daenerys, broken, bleeding, lying in the snow like a fallen queen. For a second, the battlefield disappeared. All he saw was her, the woman he once loved, the one he had stabbed in another life. And yet, here she was again. Not dead, not defeated, just broken. "She's alive," Jon said quietly. Robb shook his head. "So is the dragon. We came here to stop her. This is our chance." Jon stepped away from him, sword still drawn but lowered. "We came here to stop a tyrant, not to murder a woman in the snow." Robb stared at him, breathing hard. "You still love her." "I don't," Jon snapped. "But I won't kill her like this. Not when she's down. Robb didn't argue, but he didn't agree either. Behind them, Arya appeared like a shadow from the trees. Her face was smudged with soot and snow. Her blade was drawn. She said nothing, just watched the scene with cold eyes. Her fingers twitched on her hilt. "She's dangerous," Arya said softly. "You know it." "I know," Jon whispered. "But I won't be like her." Drogon growled again, louder this time. His breath steamed out in thick clouds. The moment between life and death was hanging in the air, one wrong move away from disaster. Then something unexpected happened. Daenerys opened her eyes. She coughed blood, trying to sit up. Her body trembled, but her spirit, that fire inside her, it hadn't gone out. She looked at Jon. For a second, her eyes softened, like they remembered something good, something buried deep. "Why?" she whispered. "You ambushed me. You attacked from the shadows, just like they did in King's Landing." Her voice was cracked, weak, but filled with bitterness. Jon crouched in the snow a few steps away. "Because you left us no choice. You said bend the knee or burn. You came with dragons. I offered peace," she said. "You offered silence," Robb growled from behind. "You offered fire." She looked past Jon, straight at Robb, her lip curled slightly. "The young wolf, risen from the grave. You were smarter dead, and you were kinder," Robb shot back. Drogon stepped closer now, his huge claws crushing the ground. He let out a warning growl, low and dangerous. His tail smashed a nearby tree like a twig. Arya stepped between them all, raising her voice for the first time. "This ends here," she said. "One way or another." Suddenly the earth rumbled. Everyone looked up. From the skies, something massive was coming. Rhaegal, bleeding, wounded, but still flying. His body swayed in the air, but he roared as he descended fast toward the battlefield. Arya cursed. "We need to fall back now." But Robb stood frozen. If Rhaegal landed, they'd be surrounded by 2 dragons, and they wouldn't survive a second round. Even Drogon, injured as he was, could turn them to ash in a heartbeat if pushed. Daenerys tried to stand again. Blood ran from her mouth, but her hands gripped the snow. "Call them off," Jon said. "Before it's too late." "You'll kill me either way," she hissed. "Why should I?" "Because if you don't," Jon said, looking into her eyes, "we all die here. You, me, your dragons, my family, all of us." Rhaegal landed hard beside her, shaking the ground. His breathing was rough, chest rising and falling fast. But his eyes locked on Robb, Jon, and Arya with rage. He opened his mouth. Jon stepped between them, arms wide. "No!" he shouted. The air held its breath. Drogon growled. Rhaegal hissed. Arya's hand went to her dagger. Robb raised his sword, then silence. Daenerys, still lying in the snow, raised one shaky hand. She whispered something in Valyrian, and both dragons paused. They didn't back down. But they didn't attack either. Jon turned to her again. "It doesn't have to end like this." Daenerys looked up at the sky, snow falling on her bloodied face. "It already has," she whispered. The snow was still falling. Softer now, but the cold had sunk deep into the bones of every man still standing. The battlefield lay quiet, not because the war was over, but because no one was sure what came next. Daenerys sat on her knees, shoulders shaking, her silver hair soaked with blood and snow. Her dragons watched silently, wounded but alive. She looked at Jon, then Robb, then Arya, all standing there, blades still drawn, unsure whether to kill her or trust her. It was a line no one wanted to cross first. Jon finally stepped closer and knelt beside her, careful not to make any sudden moves. "We don't have to finish this in blood." Daenerys gave a weak laugh. "Everything ends in blood, Jon. You should know that by now." Arya didn't blink. Her eyes were locked on Daenerys's every move. "She's buying time," she muttered to Robb. "She'll strike again. As soon as we lower our guard." Robb didn't answer. He was watching something else, a flicker in the trees. Shadows moving, his instincts screamed, "Ambush!" He shouted suddenly. It was already too late. From the woods, unsullied soldiers burst out, cold, quiet, disciplined. They had circled the Starks in the snow, while everyone was focused on the dragons. Spears out, faces blank. They moved like machines. "Fall back!" Robb shouted. Arya disappeared like smoke into the trees. Robb parried the first spear, slashing down the second. Jon pulled Daenerys to her feet, half to protect her, half because he knew the Unsullied would kill him if she fell. "Stand down." Jon shouted at them. "She's alive. She's with us." But they didn't stop. They weren't listening. They were trained to obey only Daenerys. And at that moment Daenerys looked at them, bleeding, furious, and gave one simple nod: "Kill them." Jon saw it, saw the flicker of decision in her eyes. The rage, the betrayal, the fire. He shoved her away. "You lied," he said. "You made me," she hissed. The Unsullied rushed forward. Robb held the front with a handful of northern men, blood flying as they pushed back. Arya reappeared, blades flashing in both hands, slicing through one after another with deadly speed. Her eyes were emotionless now. Pure focus, pure death. Jon fought too, sword in hand, slashing and blocking. But the numbers were too many. The Starks were outmatched. And worse, Drogon and Rhaegal began to rise again. They weren't flying, but they were angry. They roared loud and long. And that sound broke the battle. Soldiers on both sides dropped their weapons, hands over their ears. That's when a different kind of fire exploded through the trees. From the west, a massive blast shot forward, not from a dragon, but from one of Gendry's dragon-killing ballistas. A bolt tipped with wildfire struck the ground between Drogon and Rhaegal. The fire exploded green, blinding, sending everyone to the ground. Daenerys screamed. The dragons scattered in panic. Robb turned and saw Gendry riding up with reinforcements. Cavalry from the Vale, fighters from the Riverlands, all flying the banner of the direwolf. "You came," Robb said, breathing hard. "Wouldn't miss it," Gendry grinned. "That bolt wasn't meant to kill, just to buy us time." The Unsullied, seeing they were now surrounded, paused. For the first time, they hesitated. Jon walked back to Daenerys. This time she couldn't stand. Her ankle was twisted, blood leaking from her side. Drogon circled above but didn't attack. "You lost," Jon said quietly. "Again." But Daenerys smiled. "Not yet," she whispered. Then she pulled something from her coat, a small whistle. Dragon bone, carved. Sharp, she blew it. A high-pitched sound echoed across the snow, and Drogon roared like hell had opened. He dove straight at Jon. Robb screamed, "Jon, move!" Jon ducked at the last second. Drogon's fire missed him by inches, but lit the trees behind him into a wall of flame. The heat was unbearable. Arya tried to reach him, but the flames separated them. Smoke filled the air. Jon turned, but Daenerys was gone. Gone. Only a patch of blood and snow where she had been. Drogon had taken her. He'd snatched her mid-charge and vanished into the burning sky. The sky burned red as Drogon vanished into the clouds, carrying Daenerys in his claws like some fallen goddess returning to her throne. Snow melted in sheets where his fire had passed, and the forest smoldered behind them. Smoke curled into the sky, mixing with the ash of broken trees and bloodied snow. Jon stood there, stunned, his hair wet with sweat and his sword still in hand. He had been inches from death. Again and again she had escaped. Daenerys Stormborn, the Dragon Queen. Even after defeat she knew how to vanish like smoke. Robb marched up beside him, face blackened with soot. "You let her live," he said, bitter. "Now she'll burn the north for it." Jon didn't answer. His heart was heavy. He knew Robb was right. Across the field, Arya dragged a wounded soldier to the edge of the tree line. Her eyes were colder than the snow. "She won't run next time," Arya said, glaring at the sky. "Next time I'll cut her throat myself." Gendry walked over with a cut above his eyebrow, holding a broken ballista bolt. "That was too close." "We weren't ready." "We were," Robb said, "but we hesitated." "That won't happen again," but it already had. That night, as the fires died and the wounded were tended, a small scout group was sent to track Drogon's path south. They never returned. Hours passed. Then a horse came back riderless, blood on its saddle. Worse, one of the scouts wasn't just any soldier, it was Arya. She was missing. Jon clenched his fists. She wouldn't fall. "She's too smart." "She was alone," Gendry said, panic in his voice. "They must have taken her." Robb grabbed the map, tracing the dragon's path with his finger. "If they have Arya, they'll use her." He looked at Jon. They know she's worth more than any crown. Jon's jaw clenched. Then we get her back. Meanwhile, deep in the ruins of Harrenhal, a place Daenerys had made her temporary stronghold, Arya Stark sat chained in a stone chamber. Her wrists were bruised, her lip bloodied, but her spirit, still sharp as her dagger. Daenerys stood across the room, a goblet of wine in her hand, her ankle wrapped, her side stitched. Her body had taken a beating, but her fire was back. "You're stronger than you look," Daenerys said, sipping the wine. "It took 4 unsullied to hold you down." Arya didn't respond. Daenerys walked closer, crouching before her. "You killed the Night King. I know your name." "The girl with no face." Arya's eyes narrowed. "Then you know I'll kill you too." Daenerys smiled, not with joy, but with a sharp sadness. "You won't, because now you're a message. And I'll make sure your brothers hear it loud and clear." Arya spat at her, but it missed. Daenerys stood and handed her goblet to a guard. "Chain her well. She's more dangerous than she looks." The guards dragged Arya away, kicking and biting. But Daenerys turned to Grey Worm, who waited silently by the broken door. "She's not just bait," Daenerys whispered. "She's leverage." Grey Worm nodded once. "What do you plan?" Daenerys walked to the window, looking out at the black towers of Harrenhal. "We offer peace," she said. "One last time, and if they say no?" Daenerys turned, eyes glowing with fire. "Then we send Arya's head back to Winterfell." Back in the north, Jon paced inside the war room, rage boiling beneath his skin. "She took Arya," he muttered. "She took her to punish us. She's clever," Robb said. "She knows we won't risk Arya's life." A raven landed just before dawn. It carried one scroll, a single message written in elegant dark ink. "You have one chance. Surrender Winterfell and Jon Snow, or Arya Stark dies by fire." Queen Daenerys Targaryen. Silence fell over the room. Robb stared at the note, then looked at Jon. "She wants you." Jon nodded. "She wants revenge. She knows you won't let Arya die." Jon didn't answer, because deep inside, he wasn't sure if he could stop her this time. And worse, he wasn't sure if he wanted to survive, if Arya didn't. The candlelight in Winterfell's war room flickered low, casting long shadows across the old stone walls. Outside, snow fell heavy. Inside, silence weighed on everyone like a curse. Jon stared at the raven's message for the 100th time. Surrender Winterfell and Jon Snow, or Arya Stark dies by fire. He could still see Arya's face in the smoke, her silence, her fury. The way she disappeared in battle like a ghost, uncatchable, unkillable. And now she was Daenerys' prisoner. "She won't break," Robb said firmly. "Not Arya." "No," Jon whispered. "She won't scream. She won't beg. But she'll die," Sansa said, her voice sharp and cold. "And Daenerys will make sure we all hear it." The room tensed. They had faced White Walkers, undead armies, betrayals, but this was something else, something that tore them apart from inside. Because this time, the price wasn't just honor or power, it was Arya. "She won't burn her," Jon said, though even he didn't believe it fully. "Daenerys burned thousands," Sansa snapped. "Women, children, soldiers after they surrendered. And she loved you. What do you think she'll do to your sister?" Robb stood, his voice low but furious. "We fight. We don't kneel. Arya would rather die than see us bend. And you'd let her?" Gendry shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "You'd let her die because you still want your pride?" "It's not pride," Robb snapped back. "It's survival. We surrender now, we lose everything. We give her Jon. She burns the rest of us anyway." Jon didn't speak. He was still staring at the letter. His mind was turning, dragging him back to King's Landing, to the screams, the ashes, the woman he once trusted, eyes filled with fire. Not mercy, then a quiet voice broke the room. "I think someone told her." They turned to see Brienne of Tarth standing near the door, tall and grave as ever. "What?" Robb asked. "She knew Arya was with the scouts," Brienne said. "It was a small group, chosen hours before they left. Only a few people knew. And Daenerys' ambush was too perfect. They were waiting for her. You think there's a traitor?" Sansa asked, eyes narrowing. "I know it," Brienne said. "Someone in this castle told her. Someone in this room. A chill swept the air, and for a moment no one moved. Gendry looked around, eyes wide. That's not possible. But it was, because Daenerys had been one step ahead too many times. Jon looked up slowly. "Find out who it is," he told Brienne. Quietly. "If there's a traitor in Winterfell, they're feeding her more than names." Brienne nodded and slipped out like a shadow. Robb turned back to the table. "We don't have time. We need a real plan. Not just hope." Sansa stepped forward. "We give her what she wants." "But not how she expects. What are you saying?" Jon asked. "We fake the surrender," she said. "We draw her in close. Let her think we're broken. Give her a meeting point. She'll come with dragons unsullied and her arrogance. We'll be waiting. You're gambling Arya's life," Gendry said bitterly. "No," she said. "I'm betting Daenerys still believes she's invincible. And that will be her mistake." Robb looked at Jon. "Would you go? Offer yourself as bait?" Jon didn't hesitate. "For Arya?" "Every time," Sansa nodded. "Then we make her think you're surrendering Winterfell, alone. But what if she burns him the second she sees him?" Gendry asked. "She won't," Sansa replied. "She wants him to hurt, to beg. She wants to break him first," Jon agreed quietly. "She wants justice. In her mind, I'm the traitor." Sansa looked him in the eye. "Then you give her what she wants. A broken Jon Snow, long enough for Arya to escape." That night a raven was sent to Harrenhal. "I will surrender myself, alone, at the Godswood of Ashmere 3 days from now. No blood, no armies. Arya lives, and you get your justice. Signed, Jon Snow 3 days, and in those 3 days the Starks would prepare not for peace, but for the most dangerous trap Winterfell had ever set. What they didn't know was that the traitor had already read the message, and a shadow was already galloping toward Daenerys, faster than any raven. The days before the meeting at Ashmere passed like a slow drumbeat. Every sound in Winterfell felt sharper. The clatter of armor, the whisper of boots on stone, the hiss of fire in the hearth. Everyone was on edge. Everyone was watching everyone else. Jon didn't sleep. He spent his nights walking the ramparts, thinking about Arya, about Daenerys, about how far they had all fallen from the children they used to be. Every step he took in the snow felt heavier. Every memory of her smile, her eyes, her fire twisted his heart tighter. "She's not the same person," he told himself. "Neither am I." Down below, Robb trained with the men, his sword flashing in the pale light. He was preparing for war, but Jon could see it in his brother's eyes. This wasn't just a battle anymore. This was survival and revenge, and maybe something darker. Brienne returned quietly on the second night. She looked as though she had walked through a storm. Snow clung to her cloak, and her sword hand trembled slightly as she entered the hall. "I found your traitor," she said simply. The room went silent. "Who?" Robb asked. Brienne's eyes swept across them all. She didn't speak. She just reached out and grabbed one of the men standing near the fire by the collar, dragging him forward. It was Gendry. The shock in the hall cracked like thunder. "That's a lie!" Gendry shouted, shoving at her grip. "I'd never betray Arya, never." But Brienne's eyes didn't waver. "He met a rider 2 nights ago at the edge of the Wolfswood. I followed. He passed a message in secret." Gendry's face went pale. "It wasn't Daenerys. I swear it wasn't her. Then who?" Sansa's voice was sharp as ice. Gendry's mouth opened and closed. He looked at Jon, eyes wide, pleading. "It was for Arya. I thought it would help her. I sent a note saying where she was, hoping Daenerys would keep her safe. She has her anyway. I didn't know it was a trap." "You told her exactly where Arya would be," Robb growled. "You gave her the one thing she wanted." Gendry's hands shook. "I didn't mean to." "You doomed her," Robb snapped. Jon stepped forward. His face was blank, but his voice cut through the room like a blade. "Take him to the cells. He doesn't speak to anyone until this is done." Gendry looked like he wanted to fight, but then his shoulders slumped. 2 guards dragged him away. The hall was silent, except for the echo of boots on stone. Sansa crossed her arms. "So we're going into this trap without knowing what else she knows?" Jon nodded. "We go anyway." Robb slammed his hand on the table. "Jon, this is suicide." Jon looked at him. "It's a chance to save Arya. That's enough." He left before anyone could argue. 3 days later, the Godswood of Ashmere was silent. Snow fell thicker here, muffling sound, covering the old weirwood tree in a white shroud. Jon stood alone beneath its blood-red leaves, dressed in plain black, no armor, no wolf cloak. Longclaw was strapped to his back, but his hands were empty. The stillness was suffocating. He could feel eyes on him even though he saw no one. Then wings, a shadow passed over the snow, huge and dark. Drogon landed first, his claws cracking the frozen ground. His breath steamed in the cold. Rhaegal followed a moment later, limping but still powerful. The air smelled of ash and iron. Between them, Daenerys walked forward. She wore black leather, her hair braided with silver rings. She looked stronger than she had at Harrenhal, but also harder. Her eyes were like polished steel. Behind her, two unsullied dragged Arya forward, chains tight around her wrists. She was bloodied but standing, her face blank. When her eyes met Jon's, they burned with fury and not fear. "You came alone," Daenerys said, her voice echoing in the snow. "I said I would," Jon replied. "You still lie well." She glanced at the tree line. "Your brother is here. Your sister, too." "I can feel them watching." Jon said nothing. Daenerys stepped closer, her dragons breathing slow, hot air over her shoulders. "You killed me once, Jon. You stabbed me in the heart. I want you to feel what that felt like." Her eyes flicked to Arya. Jon stepped forward. "Let her go. This is between us." "It's always been between us," Daenerys whispered. "The wolf and the dragon." She nodded to the Unsullied. They dragged Arya to the weirwood tree and chained her to its trunk, as if she were some old god being sacrificed. She didn't struggle. Her eyes stayed on Jon. Daenerys raised her hand. Drogon moved closer. "Watch," she said softly. "Watch as I take what you love." The wind howled through the godswood, shaking the blood-red leaves of the weirwood like dying hands. Snow swirled around the clearing, cold and cruel, but not colder than what was about to happen. Arya Stark was chained to the old tree like a sacrifice, but her eyes held no fear. They were locked on Daenerys, burning with silent fury. She had been captured, beaten, threatened, but never broken. Drogon moved closer, his breath rising in steam. His eyes, deep and ancient, fixed on Arya. Fire began to build in his throat, a low, rising growl like thunder in a storm. Daenerys didn't look at the dragon. She looked at Jon. "This is justice," she said. "You betrayed me. She tried to kill me. Your whole family turned against me after I gave everything. You burned cities," Jon said, voice raw. "You murdered children. You wanted the world to kneel. I gave them peace," she whispered. "They didn't want it." She raised her hand. Jon's fingers twitched near the hilt of Longclaw. "Don't!" Arya said suddenly, sharp and clear. "If you move, she'll kill me anyway." Daenerys hesitated for a heartbeat, not out of mercy. Out of calculation. She wanted Jon to suffer first. Then came a sound, a howl loud, fierce, full of rage. From the trees burst grey wind, Robb's direwolf massive and snarling. He leapt into the clearing with glowing eyes. And before Drogon could turn, grey wind lunged at his flank, tearing flesh with fang and fury. At the same moment, Robb Stark charged out of the woods behind him, armor glinting. Saw Drawn face a storm of ice and blood. "Now!" he roared. Chaos exploded. Dozens of northern soldiers rushed the clearing from both sides. Gendry, now freed and forgiven, led a squad of ballista operators hidden in the trees. Enormous bolts fired, not to kill the dragons, but to push them back. Blasts of wildfire and smoke lit the air, turning the battlefield into confusion and shadows. Jon ran to Arya, cutting her chains with 2 clean swipes. "About time," she muttered, rubbing her wrists. "You okay?" She smirked, grabbing a blade from his side. "Let's kill a queen!" Drogon roared and tried to fly, but grey wind clung to his wing like a beast possessed. Rhaegal, weaker and slower, tried to rise, only to be struck in the shoulder by a wild, fire-laced bolt. He crashed down with a cry, alive but grounded. Daenerys watched it all, frozen in the middle of the storm. Her perfect plan torn apart in seconds. Her army outnumbered, her dragons wounded. She turned to run, but Jon was already there. She looked into his eyes. The man who once loved her, the man who stabbed her in the heart. And now he stood there again, sword in hand, breathing hard. "I never wanted this," Jon said. She shook her head slowly. "You were mine. You could have ruled with me. I wanted peace," he said. "I am peace," she whispered, stepping toward him. The world just didn't understand. Behind her, Arya appeared, silent as death. Blade raised, Jon saw her, but he didn't stop her. He only whispered, "I'm sorry." And Arya struck. Her dagger sank into Daenerys' side, the same blade she used on the Night King. Quick, clean, cold. Daenerys gasped, falling into Jon's arms. Her eyes went wide with shock. For a moment she looked not like a queen, but a girl, lost, lonely, afraid. "Dracarys," she whispered. But Drogon didn't move. He saw his mother fall, yes, but this time he did nothing. He just stood there, eyes locked on Jon. Then he let out a long, low cry, not rage, but mourning. He turned slowly and, with wings heavy and torn, flew into the clouds above, vanishing into the snow and smoke. It was over. Robb stood, sword lowered. Blood running down his arm, Arya wiped her blade and said nothing. Jon knelt in the snow, holding the lifeless body of the Dragon Queen. Later, back at Winterfell, the fires burned low and the banners flew at half-mast. The war had ended, but the scars were fresh. The North would remain free. The dragons had vanished into legend. And the last chapter of Daenerys Targaryen was written in ash. Arya left the next morning, heading west. "There's no peace here," she said. "Just ghosts." Robb remained as Warden of the North. But he smiled less now. Jon. He rode beyond the wall. He never said why, but maybe he had done what he always did, chosen the cold over the fire, because fire, in the end, had taken everything.